Why would a guy who thrived on danger just walk away? The truth is, Hugh's story took a dark turn, one filled with pain, loss, and a side of him the cameras never caught. And to understand it, we've got to rewind and see where it all began. Hugh Rowland, better known to fans as the Polar Bear, built a reputation as one of the toughest truckers on the planet. If you ever caught an episode of Ice Road Truckers on the History Channel, chances are you saw him braving some of the most unforgiving roads out there. Frozen lakes, blizzards, and remote trails deep in the northern wilds of North America. But long before he became a reality TV legend, Hugh's story started in Kelowna, British Columbia. Born in 1957, he was no stranger to hard work. By the time he was 6, he was already steering vehicles around his family's farm. While most kids were still figuring out how to ride a bike, he was getting comfortable behind the wheel of heavy machinery. That kind of early hands-on experience laid the foundation for a lifetime of handling big rigs and dangerous jobs. His childhood was shaped by grit. Living in rural BC meant cold winters, long hours, and learning how to push through when things got tough. That environment built a work ethic that stuck with him. So, when the opportunity came to haul supplies across frozen roads to remote gold and diamond mines, he didn't hesitate. He was just a teenager when someone asked if he wanted to make a delivery up north. The pay was good, better than anything he'd seen at that age, and without blinking, he said yes. When Hugh Rowland was just 15 years old, he wasn't thinking about fame or TV cameras. He was just a teenager up in the Northwest Territories, gripping the wheel of a big rig and hauling freight across some of the most dangerous roads in Canada. Ice roads, to be exact. Slick, frozen paths that could crack open at any moment. The kind of roads that didn't care how old you were. But Rowland had grit. He wasn't backing down just because the job was hard or the weather was wild. He loved trucking, plain and simple, and that love kept him going. Fast forward to 2007, and Rowland's dedication was about to land him somewhere he never expected, on television screens across the country. That year, the people behind the History Channel's reality series, Ice Road Truckers, were on the hunt for drivers with real experience, real stories, and nerves of steel. Rowland checked every box, but when they first called him up, he didn't believe a word of it. He figured it was a buddy messing with him. After all, how often does a TV network want to follow a trucker into the Arctic? When they told him they wanted to put cameras in his trucks and film him driving up to Yellowknife, Rowland didn't roll out the red carpet. He just let them know the roads were closed for the season and said, if they were serious, they could try again next year. And they did. A year later, those producers showed up right at his front door, ready to get started. That's when it hit him. This wasn't a prank. This was real. Now you'd think someone might jump at the chance to be on a hit show, but Rowland was never chasing the spotlight. He was focused on his job. Cameras or no cameras. He had loads to haul and bills to pay. He made it clear from the jump. He didn't want the film crew getting in his way, slowing him down or messing with his money. As far as he was concerned, he believed no one would be interested in watching trucks navigate frozen highways. In his view, there was little appeal in seeing drivers endure the brutal cold on desolate, icy roads. But once the cameras started rolling, audiences quickly proved him wrong, drawn in by the unfiltered mix of grit, danger, and raw survival. Hugh talked about how people didn't really get just how serious the job was. The show, as wild as it looked, still didn't capture the full weight of what it meant to risk your life out there. He'd shake his head when people called them cowboys, because to him, it wasn't about chasing thrills. It was about respecting the ice. One wrong move, and someone's not coming home. When the first season dropped, it hit the UK in early 2008 on Channel 5. Australia picked it up around the same time on Austar and Foxtel, and Network 10 joined in that June. By fall, the Netherlands had it on RTL 7. Italy came a little later, airing it on the History Channel in January 2010 under the name Gli Eroi del Ghiaccio, which translated to Heroes of the Ice. The moment it aired, the numbers were wild. 4 million people tuned in, making it the History Channel's biggest original hit in over a decade. Critics were all over it too. Some called it gripping. Others were caught off guard by how deep the show went, how these drivers, often exhausted and cold to the bone, still pushed through with nothing but a steering wheel and a steel nerve. Hugh chuckled at how the show portrayed them as thrills-seeking daredevils when, in truth, it was life-or-death work. He understood the appeal. The edge-of-your-seat tension was what kept audiences coming back. As he put it, people were hooked on the danger. That constant walk along the razor's edge between survival and disaster, that's what made the show stand out. He'd been driving on the ice for years. The paycheck was a bonus, but it wasn't what brought him back each season. It was something deeper, something in his blood. Still, the job took its toll. Long stretches away from home, brutal cold, and the ever-present risk that any trip might be the last. But when the season rolled around again, he was ready. Every time he left, he looked forward to the road, and every time he came home, part of him missed it already. Hugh had his own code when it came to the cameras, limits on how much of his world they could access. In hindsight, his feelings about it all were mixed. Recognition didn't bother him, but he never sought the spotlight. If anything, he preferred to disappear into the crowd. He always said he was a private guy. Sure, he'd smile for a photo or sign an autograph if someone asked, but it never really felt natural. Every time someone handed him a pen, he'd pause for a second, thinking, what the hell am I even supposed to write? But with Hugh, the grind didn't stop when the cameras turned off. As diamond and gold mines emerged in the remote northern wilderness, the demand for supplies surged, and with it, the need for fearless drivers like Hugh. His work was perilous, no doubt, but the high pay made it difficult to turn down. Over time, Hugh wasn't just behind the wheel. He was investing in the rigs themselves. By the time Ice Road Truckers debuted on television, he was already deeply entrenched in the industry. By then, Rowland wasn't just another driver. He was already a heavyweight in that frosty world, known for his grit and his guts, and when people heard these truckers could earn an entire year's salary in just a few brutal months, it wasn't hard to see why guys kept signing up. Some of the seasoned vets were reportedly raking in over $100,000 a season. Tempting, right? But that money came with a catch. Every run was a gamble. Hugh himself once talked about the eerie sound of ice cracking beneath a fully loaded rig. It wasn't just unsettling. It was terrifying. Some rookies would hear that sound and never make it past their first haul. Still, Rowland possessed a distinct presence that set him apart. When he appeared on Ice Road Truckers, he quickly became a fan favorite. Not solely for his driving skills, but for his commanding personality. He was known by a memorable nickname, the Polar Bear. Interestingly, the name originated from a bug deflector on one of his trucks. Yet, as viewers got to know him, the moniker felt increasingly fitting. Hugh was large, rugged, and exuded a raw, unfiltered intensity. He even acknowledged being the kind of man who wouldn't shy away from a fist fight if provoked. In the end, the name Polar Bear didn't just stick, it defined him. When it comes to danger on the job, few professions can hold a candle to what the ice road truckers face every single winter. Just picture it. Massive 18-wheelers rolling across frozen lakes in the Canadian wilderness, carrying tens of thousands of pounds of cargo, while the temperature plummets to -60. It's not just a job. It's a constant tightrope walk between paycheck and peril. The thrill? It's baked into every mile of that icy highway. But so is the risk, and that's the part viewers can't tear their eyes away from. At the heart of this high-stakes world is Hugh Rowland, a seasoned veteran of the ice roads, with a lifetime of experience and more stories than most could bear to hear. Rowland lays bare the brutal reality in his book On Thin Ice. He begins with a sobering fact. No one whose truck has gone through the ice has ever been saved. It's a grim truth that sets the tone, but it gets even darker. Rowland has lost 35 friends and family members to the unforgiving terrain. Numbers like that don't just highlight the risk, they redefine the very meaning of peril. Still, Rowland isn't just here to shock. He's got a deep respect for the frozen roads he's traveled for decades. According to him, most tragedies out there happen because someone wasn't paying attention or was driving too fast. He always keeps his window down, even when it's brutally cold, just so he can listen to the ice. Because to him, that cracking and shifting, that's the road talking, and if you don't listen, the ice might just swallow you whole. He's paired with one outlet that over the years he's essentially frozen every part of his body. Blackened fingers, frost-bitten cheeks, even enduring 3 days trapped in his truck, buried in snow. At temperatures as low as 60 below zero, survival isn't about toughness. It's about the respect you have for the cold. Hypothermia can set in within minutes. Organ failure, frostbite. These aren't abstract dangers. They're a constant part of the equation. There's also a science to surviving out there. Rowland explained that the ice only supports so much weight, and it's all about movement. While a truck might be allowed to carry 100,000 pounds while driving if it stops, that weight drops to $60,000. The reason? When a truck halts, it starts to press straight down, and the ice below has no way to redistribute the pressure. Stop too long, and it's like punching a hole through the floor, and once a rig goes under, it's gone. New drivers often learn the hard way. Some hear the ice cracking beneath their wheels and freeze, paralyzed by fear. Rowland says they have to be pulled off the lake and sent back, because hesitation is a one-way ticket to disaster. His advice? Keep moving. Always. The second you stop, you're gambling with everything. While the show heavily emphasized fierce competition, Rowland didn't share that perspective. For him, it wasn't a dramatic showdown between drivers. It was simply a job. A grueling, round-the-clock grind where the primary objective was hauling as many loads as possible before the roads closed for the season. This likely won't come as a surprise to anyone familiar with reality TV. Much of what's shown is crafted for drama, editing footage to heighten tension and create a more competitive atmosphere. While the show portrayed clear winners and losers, Rowland maintained that most drivers weren't focused on any of that. Their goal was straightforward. Get the job done. Not seek fame or chase after imaginary trophies. And let's be honest, maybe it's a good thing they weren't racing each other. These drivers already had enough on their plates, maneuvering giant rigs over frozen lakes and through whiteout conditions. Adding a real rivalry to that mix might have just made things worse. Speaking of drama and dynamics, if you watch the early seasons, you probably noticed it was a mostly male crew. Lisa Kelly didn't show up until season 3. Rowland had a theory about that. He figured the producers might have brought her on partly to shake things up and maybe even pull in a few more viewers. And while Rowland sometimes talked like Lisa was still learning the ropes, the truth was a bit different. Lisa had already been hauling for Carlisle Transportation for years before she ever appeared on screen. She even mentioned on David Letterman that she'd been trucking for 7 years by then. In interviews, Rowland gave her credit for bringing attention to the show. He said the producers were training her up on camera, showing her tackle the big hauls, and thought she'd become a pretty good little trucker. Still, his tone sometimes made it seem like he thought her main role was more about being a draw for viewers than a serious trucker. But over time, Lisa proved otherwise, driving the same brutal roads as the others, and even starring in the spin-off Deadliest Roads, taking on treacherous routes in India and South America. If anyone had doubts, she laid them to rest. Rowland's journey on the show wasn't without its challenges. He candidly discussed some of the tougher moments, particularly when it came to managing his team. In an interview with YouTuber Joshua Nanny, Rowland revealed how filming began to impact his business. Before the cameras rolled, he trusted his crew, but once the spotlight was on them, things shifted. His drivers, once focused on the work, began to crave attention and fame. In the end, Rowland made the difficult decision to fire every single one of them. Despite their departure, the show continued to focus on those former drivers, while Rowland quietly brought in recruits and returned to the grind. Over time, he said the cameras faded into the background. Unless they were filming something significant, he barely noticed their presence, concentrating instead on the work at hand. Rowland remained a central figure on the show for 8 seasons, becoming a staple and even appearing in a few spin-offs. However, in 2014, he abruptly disappeared from the series. It wasn't a matter of creative differences or early retirement. What truly pulled him away from the ice was a serious car accident that flipped his life upside down. At the time of the accident, Rowland wasn't even driving. He was riding shotgun while one of the show's producers, Will Morrison, was behind the wheel. According to court documents, Morrison lost control and crashed into a cluster of trees on a Canadian road. Rowland ended up filing a lawsuit against him, claiming Morrison had been driving recklessly, but the accident didn't just result in a few bruises. It caused major injuries to the lower half of Rowland's body. He said those injuries were so severe that they ended his ability to drive trucks professionally, essentially cutting short a career he'd built his life around. But the lawsuit didn't stop at career-ending injuries. Rowland also revealed that the accident had taken a toll on his personal life, especially his marriage. He claimed that the injuries affected his intimacy with his wife, and that the physical and emotional fallout had created serious problems at home. TMZ picked up the story, reporting on how Rowland blamed the crash not just for derailing his career, but also for damaging one of the most personal parts of his life. As for how Rowland feels about ice road truckers today, well, surprisingly, he never really watched it, even while he was starring in it. In an old YouTube interview, Rowland admitted he'd only seen about 3 episodes, all from promotional events when the show was just getting off the ground. His friends and family, on the other hand, were big fans and constantly asked him about scenes from the show. But Rowland said he didn't really enjoy watching himself on TV, and since he was living it, he didn't feel the need to relive it on screen. Since leaving the show, Rowland has stepped away from the spotlight and shifted his focus. He's been pouring his energy into his construction business and spending more time with his family. And despite everything he's been through, he's still come out on top financially. At 64 years old, he's reportedly worth around $2 million, making him the wealthiest cast member in Ice Road Truckers history. It's a different kind of road now, but Rowland's still steering his own course.